Welcome to Pull, Push, Shove, a podcast series celebrating 50 years of Scarborough Group International. I'm Nick Matthew. Pull, push, shove. It's more than just a phrase. It's a way of working, a way of leading, and a way of making decisions. Over 5 decades, Scarborough Group has grown by knowing when to pull people together, to push forward through uncertainty, and when to shove, to act decisively when hesitation would cost more than action. In this series, we explore the moments, the relationships and pressures that forged that mindset and the people who lived it. This episode celebrates the power of partnerships. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of the Middlewood Locks project in Salford. Today, I'm joined by Nicola Wallis from the Scarborough Group and Kurt Partington from Salford City Council. We discuss why that project was so successful and what it would take to do it again. Obviously, 10 years since the successful Middlewood Locks project was launched. For those of us who don't know much about it, Nicola, perhaps you could just give us a little bit of background about what the project was and why it was so successful.
Yeah, of course. So Middlewood Locks is a 25-acre neighbourhood. It's located at the gateway to Manchester city centre. It's a really important year for us. This year we celebrate our 10th anniversary. So we're about halfway through the scheme now. We've delivered over 1,300 new homes. We have a community of 2,600 residents. We're very, very lucky that we've established a really fabulous place with a very, very strong community. And we are very shortly, we will be making some announcements about the next phases that are coming forward.
So, Kurt, I knew something a little bit about this project, my relationship with the Scarborough Group. I actually wore Middlewood Locks on my kit for a while. And I remember running past it. We used to do some training sessions along the canal there from Sports City running across, and I was just sort of saw it in its various stages of development. And obviously what you see now is an incredible regeneration, really, of that area. How would you sum up its success from the Salford City Council point of view?
I would sum it up about a place that's been created. You know, Nicola talked about the success of where we are, sort of halfway along the journey of this. You know, one of the leading residential regeneration schemes that we've got in Salford. And Salford's been blessed with some really good, strong neighbourhoods that have been transformed and regenerated from really good partners, trusted partners. And certainly Scarborough, Nicola and Paul are really important in that trusted relationship about how we've expanded the city centre. You know, that westward expansion of Manchester city centre that Nicola just touched on. We're there right in the heart of old traditional Salford. We've transformed derelict land or derelict land that was being used for surface car parking. It's fundamentally changed it now to a place where people want to go. How do I look at success? It's about the place that's, as I said, that's been created. People wanting to go there, people wanting to live there, showing our students about what is best in class, about how they can learn from their studies, about what good quality regeneration is all about. And for me, that's the really exciting point, is where you've got to a point you can mark it and then go, that is good, move on for the next the next 10 years.
This episode's all about, you mentioned the word partnership several times in that answer. And this is what this episode essentially is about. It's about pulling people together. The trust was another word that you mentioned there. How did this partnership come about? What was so special about Salford and this project?
I think, a few things, to be honest. I think Middlewood Locks, it was a cleared site. It's a gateway site, so it's in a great location. And we have a canal running through the heart of Middlewood Locks, which is a beautiful natural feature and actually creates just this beautiful, wonderful, calm environment with lots of wildlife. We're very much regeneration led. So it was just a great opportunity to leave a legacy, to create a great neighbourhood. It is about location. As I said earlier, it's a great location. But it was just on scale as well, to be able to do something that actually fundamentally changes and shapes cities. We're aligned with what we want to achieve with Middlewood Locks, and I think that's really important. We work in partnership. Partnership is really strong. We've got a great relationship with Kurt, his team, and Salford City Council. So I think the fact that we all want Middlewood Locks to be a success. We all want to deliver more homes for people to come and live. And also we want to create a place that we can all be really proud of, that's a legacy, but is actually not just about the people within, but it's about the wider community as well. So it's a welcoming space. And I think we are very, very aligned with Salford and Kurt and his team in that.
We can have shared values, and that's really important about the kind of place that we want to be. We're here to sort of redevelop or enhance a part of the city for our residents. And you've got an organisation that wants to do likewise against some shared values. But that's also then a long-term vision. So the city has got a long-term vision that it's seeking to achieve in central Salford, and Middlewood Locks is a really important neighbourhood within that. So you're already aligned then. You've got a document, a master plan or a planning guidance that is shaping that vision, that collective direction of travel. We're pulling in the right direction. We're doing that together. But you talked about partnerships, and that's really important. I keep touching on that because the city doesn't build things on its own. Everything that you look at, whether that's the change from a derelict dockland into the area that it is today, that has come from relationships and partnerships. And part of the important bits there is you've got organisations that could. You talked about the sort of the international sort of stage in which Scarborough can operate. I've got to, and as on behalf of the city, attract those partners to look at Salford and think about Salford when they get out of bed in the morning.
Sure.
So the relationship is really important. It doesn't have to be contractual, but it has to say, look, we know what we want from this area.
Yeah.
We share those values. We share that direction, that vision to ensure that our partners focus on delivery, because we can add an element of value, but if you're not the partner that is delivering, you've got to ensure that you are supporting that partner in order to justify that long-term vision.
And I think that delivery point is hugely important, because if you sort of track back over the last sort of 10 years in terms of what has been delivered at Middlewood Locks, we've got a 2,600 strong community now. We've got some gorgeous amenity. We have an annual festival. We've kind of reached a real sort of milestone. We're moving forward with our future phases. I think the delivery of it, we couldn't do it on our own. We need the support of our partners at Salford Council. Homes England are also a very active public sector partner, and it's when you think about the headwinds that come along or we've experienced over the last 10 years, it's also, we meet regularly, so there's always a fluid conversation. So if we do have any situations, any issues, we get together, get our heads around the table, don't we, and we all sort of work our way through it. It means so much value to the success of Middlewood Locks, actually. And to your point about wanting to support us on the delivery side, we couldn't do what we do without the support of the council and also Homes England.
And I just echo that a little bit, because we're not talking about staff with a relationship. We're talking about the whole council and the political direction and being long-term support for growth and regeneration. Salford set off on a more recent journey around about 2005 about trying to change the dial on deprivation within the city, change the dial on in terms of population. All those indicators were in decline. We've still got a long way on deprivation, but if you look between the last two census, we've grown as a city by over 10,000. So that's a strong footing in the terms of officer and political direction to support, and then you can see that then in the successes on the indicators. We've got a lot of work to do, but the indicators are in the right direction, and key partners like Nicola and the team have made a big part of that. It's not just numbers. And what I wouldn't want anyone to do from this, listening to this podcast, is think that Middlewood Locks is an isolated project. It's not. It's about how it plugs into something that's had a significant change. And those, whether it's the canal and the festival with local people, whether it talks to sort of other creative industries just nearby, whether that's the connections and footbridges that take you into the heart of the regional centre, they're the bits that all sort of plug together. And this site and this scheme does exactly that. I actually think the next phase is going to bring in even more excitement, because I think its relationship to the arches and other parts of the community and those connections, that will be where you'll get even greater sort of sense of place and wanting to dwell and spend time.
What is the next phase?
Do you want to introduce that bit and then I'll follow it on?
Well, that's what I love about this project, is you've not just built something and then said, right, okay. Yeah. It just seems that you plugged into the legacy of the region and the people involved, right? I've got the jobs that have been created, the skills that have been developed, the investment in the people of the site and so on. They sound like good words on paper maybe, but the reality is that these things sound like they're happening, and there's plans that, you almost sound like you're, only part way through a project that's 10 years old.
Yeah. I mean, we are sort of about halfway through now, and it is really exciting. And we've created place, community, and value, and value in terms of what it's brought to the community, what it's brought to Salford Council, what it's brought to the cities. I get the greatest pleasure just watching people moving through the neighbourhood, because it is a really safe space. It's predominantly pedestrianised. Salford Council have really helped with, cycling routes, safe pedestrian routes through to the city. So I get a lot of pleasure out of watching people move around and experience the neighbourhood. But in terms of what's coming next, so we developed strategically, actually, we made the decision to develop the piece of land furthest away from the city. And we wanted to create the place around the canal and then move forward to the phases closer to the city. So we've done kind of, that first part now of Middlewood Locks, and the land that we're developing next is closest to the city. And Kurt touched on before about the arches. So sort of wrapped around that phase, really, we've got some disused arches, and they will all get activated over time. You'll have additional pedestrian routes through. You'll have a nice walk along the canal. There's a big public square, which will create this big sense of arrival. There's a half-acre park. We've got a further 909 homes, and we've got retail, leisure, hotel. But it's the connectivity as well. And to your earlier point, it's about Middlewood Locks becoming a destination, because we already do our annual festival, but within sort of our 25-acre neighbourhood, there'll be 4.5 acres of public realm. So there's lots of green, lots of blue space, lots of space for people just to come and dwell and enjoy.
And I think that's the bit I'm getting at, where if you look at Old Salford from what we now got at New Bailey, and we've got Chapel Street and this part of Middlewood Locks, the next phase is the bit that joins it all together. So we've got the routes in now, and these are some long-term plays that we've got. So bridges over the Irwell, plugging into Manchester, connections that go into other regeneration projects. It's the sum of the whole then. And that's when it will really feel like it's open. Right now, again, a scheme that really does work as a place, and for the people who live there and how it punches into existing communities, that's good. But I think it's that other bit then when it finally plugs in to existing neighbourhoods and other regen projects. Like I say, it's the sum of the whole. We'll bring it all together. Can't wait.
With a scheme the scale of Middlewood Locks, it's a 25-year project. I mean, we're 10 years in. We've probably got another 10 years, and subject to various different headwinds. It could take longer, who knows? But, our aspiration is that we keep delivering. I think that is also something else that's been really successful about Middlewood Locks. As we finish a phase, we're already on to the next phase. So we have kept, as Kevin would say, once the juggernaut starts going, you can't stop it. And it has been like that with Middlewood Locks. And to your earlier point about delivery, but I think we've got great partners, and this is very much about public sector, but we've also got a great architect on board who's been with us since the pre-planning stages. And, they followed the brief. It was all about, create a great place that people want to come and live and spend time, let the canal breathe, create, safe walking routes through the neighbourhood. So I think the master plan of Middlewood Locks, actually, there has been some changes along the way, but I actually think where we started, and to your earlier point of how do you know what that looks like? Well, in some instances, with a scheme the scale of Middlewood Locks, it's hard, isn't it? Because so much can happen.
When you've got such a large site, you need to be governed by a strategic plan. That's the point. And those principles are really, really important. Plans can evolve and change, but as long as those principles are adhered to, then it can flex and breathe a little bit. You've got to create your own legacy, your own history, and a plan helps to do that. You're not sort of building around a street pattern that is fixed, that's got local sort of connections and relationships to. So you're creating all those things. So that, some might say that's easier. Others can say, well, it's actually harder to actually establish that and stick with it. And I think, Nicola makes the point around good architectural leads all the way through. That's what we bring the students back to, is to take them through. So there's the basic street hierarchy about how people interact. Public spaces, semi-public spaces, private spaces, back to those principles of building around a canal, using the connections to existing communities that bring a reason why people dwell together. So, that long-term vision, that legacy piece, they're all intertwined based on a plan.
And that's fascinating how you've got this plan in place, but yet, you're not retrofitting it to work after the fact. But at the same time, you're evolving a little bit as you go as well, because once that regeneration takes place, it might take on a different form that you possibly couldn't predict. So where do those two things sort of meet in the middle? Is that a lot of experience? Is that a good team? Is that a good partnership between the private and the public sector?
So you can have partnerships that are very, very contractual, still deliver good things. But as Nicola has touched on, we meet regularly. And I think seeing what's coming down the track somewhere else can help us effectively evolve. So the idea of closing East Dorsal Lane, which is the road that runs through the middle of Middlewood Locks, that is something we can plan for together. That helps you then to amend certain aspects of the plan, whether that be to how it fronts to the road, how it fronts to the highway. All of those elements come back to sort of keeping a vision, keeping a plan, talking to each other, and evolving.
Core elements.
Core principles.
Core principles, isn't it?
That need to be followed through. But ultimately, where other opportunities present themselves, it's being ready. We talk a lot about pipeline of opportunity, pipeline of projects. But you do that, you build up that knowledge, you build up that intelligence, so you can see what opportunities may present themselves and then be able to report back and deliver against them. It might change the phase and it might change some of the design sort of principles of a particular building, but they come back against those long-term principles.
It does. And I think the other thing is, communication is key, isn't it? It's having a shared vision, which, we do as partnerships. We have, with Salford City Council, with Homes England, and then actually our design team, we know what the master plan is. And to Kurt's earlier point, it might evolve and some phases might change, with a scheme of this scale. We have to be able to pivot and we have to be able to have those conversations, sensible conversations, because we've all got the same goals. At the end of the day, we all want Middlewood Locks to be a success. We all want to deliver more homes. We want to bring in businesses that can work there. We want it to be a great place that we all walk through in 20 years' time and go, we were involved in creating this neighbourhood.
How hands-on has the chairman, the boss, actually having an easier time today without his, his glare at me when I'm asking the questions? So I'm feeling quite relaxed today, but we have to bring him in at some point. How hands-on was the boss?
Kevin's amazing. You know Kevin really well, but he has just got such a vision and he just has a way of bringing the right people together around the table. And when he's got the right people around the table, then he gives you the autonomy to get on and do your job, which is a really brilliant skill, I think, because then people take ownership of it. And that's really important. And, I have had quite a few conversations recently with, friends in the business and about kind of, how much the market has changed, over the last sort of 20 years. And actually, development, it's not really for the faint-hearted, because there are so many world-changing events that we have no control over, but we have to find a way through it. And Kevin will always say, you've just got to keep pushing forward, keep moving forward, speak to people, meet them for a coffee, cup of tea, beer, just have the conversation. So he is, a big advocate about just getting around the table and talking to people. Yeah. And it's just really important, that the skill of just being able to pick up the phone and say, Kurt, can we meet? I need to have a chat with you about something. And to know who to speak to. It's so important.
And I think I would come in on that a little bit as well, because we talk about, the point here is about partnership, how we come together. You've got to think about the council role in this in terms of how it has to deliver many services, often in very difficult financial positions. But the council has taken a decision to invest in its growth and regeneration, particularly in key growth locations in the city, this being one of them. So it invests in people to get results, which is the best outcomes for the people of Salford. There's no way we want to invest in people to develop and then sit in the office and dial in. We've set out from the outset that we'll meet regular and we meet down on site regular, and that's something we've done for many, many years. So coming back to the point about communication, it's bit old school, but it works.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Old school. Now that is definitely a good
Kevin.
definition of Kevin. How did you know I was talking about?
I
Kevin
knew
when I
because
said that?
I feel like those principles, those core values that Kevin has, and talk to Kevin, he's so interesting. His career, he's pretty much his football development. As Scarborough as a business, we touch every element of development that you could imagine. I always say when people join the business, you're so lucky really to work in such a diversified business, and you'll have access to, you'll meet Kurt from the council, really senior team, really senior people. And I just...
I'm sure that's a good thing.
Oh, of course it is. But I can talk about Perry, actually. So one of Kurt's colleagues who was at the council...
Yeah, to probably just 30-something years.
30-something years. And Kurt was a great connector of people. And, we've talked about we meet regularly and everything. And Kurt rang me up one day and he went, Nick, he goes, I need to introduce you to the Canal Association. He said, I'm not sure what will come out of it, but they're really passionate about the canal at Middlewood Locks. And at this point, it wasn't activated, so we didn't have any boats coming up the canal. So I was like, fine, we'll always have a cup of tea, no problem. So I had this meeting with the Canal Association, and then that materialised into them getting the right people from the Canals and Rivers Trust round the table so that we could get the work that needed to be done on the canal so we could reopen the canal. And I said, well, if we can get the canal reopened, we'll have a big party to celebrate. And that's how Middlewood Locks Fest came about. And that was all from Perry picking up the phone to me to say, can you meet to see? Don't know what will come out of it, but this is our third year of that festival now. And last year we had about 1,500 people.
Live music?
Oh, it's all centred around the canal. It's a free family community festival. So we have lots of activities for the children. We have a makers market. We have bands. We have young musicians from Salford. So lots of Salfordian. We try to keep it very much local. So we have all the Salford makers. We have all the young Salford artists. We've got this lovely young lad who's coming again, and he's just a brilliant singer. And then we have some bands. We have kayaking on the canal, and then we have a light installation. So when the lights go down, we have a light installation, which is like fire light all along the canal. So it's really good fun, actually. But that started.
Nicola is a big advocate for placemaking. Placemaking is a phrase that gets used probably not always in the right way. You can build things and you can go back to the architects, and the architects will have a sort of set of principles and visions about creating spaces. But ultimately, unless you curate them and bring people together, it isn't necessarily always a place that works. Yes. So Nicola is a sort of the driving force, I would say.
What were the biggest challenges that you faced? Because, you mentioned some things that were totally out of your control, like Brexit, COVID. You've overcome some quite big global challenges, like I said, that were totally out of your control during the first 10 years. What are some of the other, how did you cope with those to start with? But what are some of the other challenges that have cropped up along the way?
It is out of your control to an extent, but I suppose through COVID, we supported our residents because we had lots of residents living in the building. So we did what we could to support our residents. We had, people that had literally just moved into the building that didn't know anybody in the city or in Middlewood Locks. So we tried to support residents, and actually there was some really lovely scenes because most of our apartments have got balconies, so people would stand on balconies and chat to each other and got to know each other. Applaud on a Thursday night, and then one of our lovely residents from America had moved in and then got locked down. She didn't know anybody, and she told me about when it was her 30th birthday, she put a glass of champagne on her neighbour's doorstep with a note and said, please meet me on the balcony, it's my birthday in 5, and they just became the best friends. So I think the strength of the community is really important at Middlewood Locks, and we communicate with all of our residents, so we try to support as much as we can. I think that's what we all that have been involved in Middlewood Locks can be really proud of, is actually the place, because you made the point before, you can put your buildings up, but if you don't make it a place for people, then they won't stay. And some of our residents have lived there 8-9 years now, and are on the second home.
I mean, I'd come back a little bit. Some of it is about the product and the quality of the product that you've got that can ride out some of those difficulties. Okay. You can't. It's not just on sort of aimless faith, but having faith and confidence in the quality and the product that you've got can generally ride out some of those elements. And you sit that within the context of what's changed in Salford and Manchester in particular. I think that really does sort of set you in good way to ride out some of those blips. I mean, they're quite significant.
Yeah,
but
they are.
ultimately
They
they're
are.
blips. So I think that's really important. I don't think necessarily there's been problems that we've had to deal with. I think, if I'm giving a shout out, I would say, we've got a really good planning team in Salford. It's not something that I manage. I can't take credit for that. But particularly, you've got a pro-growth planning authority that wants to support. You've got a case officer who understands the complexities. So a big shout out to Amy Smith. She's been really sort of key to dealing with the scheme of this scale, the complexity of planning. Planning never gets any easier. So I think that helps having that relationship where you can talk to the planners. We bring Amy in. So I think, that they're the bits for me, is having sort of a clear long-term vision, faith in the sort of quality and the product that you've got, being able to collaborate around something, being able to pivot, being able to sort of reach out to your key partners. But everybody within the organisation or organisations rowing in the same direction, generally you find a way. And I think that's what I would take as a learning for the next stage. Not necessarily that there was a problem that you had to fix, but you say, well, you've learned something. You've created something. You've created those memories. Whether it's the chap who was queuing with his New Balance T-shirt on, with Help to Buy. Whether it's birthday celebrations on the balcony. Those are really important memories that make this place. But responding to how you can deal with problems, you generally do that together, and you generally do that on the strength of what you've got, not the sort of weaker schemes. And this is clearly not that.
And I think I would add to that trust as well, and integrity of the partnerships.
And what's it like working with the Homes England and National Housing Bank? That is something that you mentioned in one of your answers earlier. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So Homes England are one of our key public sector partners as well. And I mean, again, like Salford City Council, hugely supportive of Middlewood Locks, and have been involved in Middlewood Locks right the way through since we put our first spade in the ground, really. And I mean, Terry Errington, who is one of our key contacts at Homes England, he would say the relationship between public and private sector partnership is all about bringing the different skills together and making it work. So I think, again, circle back to, it's very much about the people that you're working with and having those skills. Because, big regen projects like Middlewood Locks, it takes a lot of funding, and it takes a lot of vision, and it takes a lot of belief that we can do it. We need the support. Kevin, genuinely, I remember I joined 12 years ago, and I remember going to have a look at Middlewood Locks with Kevin and standing by the arches with a master plan, and we talked about where we were going to start developing. And at that point, there was hardly anything around. There was nothing. You could see a bit of the city of Manchester skyline, but there was very little. And we'd just kind of come out of, a really tough time, the crash and everything. And Kevin is always impeccable with time. And it was kind of like, well, we get going now. There's nothing around us now, but we will start building, and it will all come. And that's exactly what happened. And then through great partnerships with Homes England and Salford City Council, and just the continuity of the conversation, we're always talking about, and how we can help each other, even with the tours, even like, Kurt mentioned his colleague Amy. She brought all of her young planners to Middlewood Locks, which was lovely for her, because, she's been so involved in the delivery of Middlewood Locks and the success. We as a developer, we know that we're not taking all the medals or the badges or, all the awards. We drag Kurt along to the awards as well. We're up for an award, we all go together, because our team is not just about the team within the business, it's about the wider team, and it's that team that are behind the success of Middlewood Locks. It's all of us together playing our part, working hard to deliver the project that makes it a success.
Yeah, those moments are really important. Planning, coming back to that for a minute, planning does get a bad reputation. I don't think that's the case in Salford. But you're trying to attract good people always into whatever part of the business, whether that's planning in this instance. So having good schemes to be involved in is something that's difficult. It is complex, but you can share in the moments to say, I was part of that. And I'm sure Amy would say exactly that she's been part of something where she had to unpick the complexities of planning legally and other kind of policies to that, but be part of delivering of something that is, she can see now and take other peers round and sort of learn from that. It's good.
It's significant, isn't it? Like you mentioned before about placemaking, but Middlewood Locks, it's everything. When you're in Middlewood Locks, I mean, I know it's probably a while since you've been, you'll have to come back and have another look, Nick, come to the festival. But I know I was going to say come to the festival. But it's you walk out of your front door and you're walking into beautiful, well-maintained, well-managed, landscaped public realm, and lovely walks along the canal and seating and all of that is, we talked to the planners about the importance of the public realm, and Amy's very sort of heavily involved in that. And then we look at areas, pockets for events, so we can host festivals and, yoga, cinema. So all of these conversations, all of that narrative, it's just hugely important, isn't it, around creating the place. It's not just about putting up buildings. If you just put up buildings, people won't stay. If you create a place where the community can flourish, then they'll stay.
Absolutely.
These partnerships are not perhaps as common as between the public and private sector. So what would be your, it might come down to that communication again, I don't know, but how to help create more of these collaborations around the country type of thing? What would be your sort of advice, I guess?
I think it's having a shared goal, isn't it? I think
I would like to think the other way is that most authorities would snatch their hand off and want a Scarborough development to come in there. So we have many tours, not just of this area, but throughout central Salford. People want to come and say, "Have you done it?" And how have you done it? It comes back to relationships and partnerships with different organisations about trying to change a place based on a strategic long-term vision.
Yeah.
So they do come and they do want a slice of that. I want to say, no, keep staying here.
Guys, coming to the part of the episode where we sort of summarise and round up things like lessons learned and, really celebrate this project as a whole. And if you were going to try and summarise then now, you've mentioned you didn't want to put a number on it because, it could be 5 more years, could be 10, could be 50, whatever, but you're definitely safe to say you're part way through this project, certainly not finished at the 10-year mark. There's a lot more positive regeneration to come. What are your lessons that you've learned in these first 10 years that you're going to apply to the next 10 years?
I'd say lessons learned is partnership is key. Is communication is a huge part of that. It's making sure that you are constantly, that you can pivot because the market can change, world events can happen, so that you have a degree of flexibility within your master plan that if you do need to look at your next phases. I made the point earlier, we went from an apartment scheme, we were delivering all apartments, and then we decided actually we needed to put some townhouses in there. So it's having the ability to see what's coming down the tracks at you. And then, is this still right? Is this phase still right for the way that the market's changing? Or, do we need more homes at Middlewood Locks, or do we need more community? So it's having the ability to assess what's happening in the market and talking to your partners, and making sure that the phases that you're delivering are the right phases for that point in time in the market.
Yeah, no, I would probably echo that, but also add in around not self-editing. So sometimes you can strive to get something delivered because of a set of circumstances. The difficult or more difficult one is when not to change and to stick to what you believe in and the values that are there. So don't self-edit it to the quality that you've got just for the purpose of delivery. So and that hasn't happened here. That's why we've got a scheme that we're all really proud of. It's won many awards and all those kind of elements that we've talked about throughout the podcast. But sometimes it's about not changing because it's the right thing to do. Even in the knowledge of all the fact that the juggernaut is very difficult to stop from a regeneration perspective, to get going again, so don't lose that momentum. So sometimes it's just sticking to those values and not sort of chipping away and self-editing down to something that you wouldn't be proud of in 8 years.
I think that's a really good point because, the quality of Middlewood Locks, of everything that we've delivered, from the quality of the landscaping to the quality of the specification that we put within the homes, to the finishes within the podium gardens, and the quality is absolutely fantastic. And we always come back to what's it going to look and feel like in 20, 30 30 years' time. You know, we need to make sure that all of the materials are have got longevity. And to your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, we would never compromise on quality, because that is hugely important. And there is an expectation, you know, we have an expectation. We're very proud in what we've delivered, and we wouldn't compromise on future phases. We will make sure that, you know, things evolve. You know, we've got electric charging points in railings, which is the latest phase we've done. We didn't have them in phase 1, for example, because electric cars weren't, you know, we've got a big parcel locker and an atrium space for the residents. So because the market's constantly changing, you know, we're trying to preempt what's that next phase going to look and feel like, but we would never compromise on the quality. We might have to look at some of the design, but we would never compromise on quality.
We've talked about legacy. And I suppose now, over the next however many years it is to finish, that custodianship of a really important part of the city of Salford, that is going to be really important to ensure that you don't water that down and miss out on that legacy. It's very easy to be tarnished by something of a poorer quality. It's probably harder now. So sticking to that vision, sticking to those principles, not self-editing, ensuring that that legacy is delivered at the end, and you look back over the whole of both parts of Middlewood Locks, that's the point where the city and the people of Salford will look back on us all to see whether we've achieved that long-lasting legacy for our city.
Well, it seems like it's a project that's going to last the test of time because of all the work that's gone into it at the beginning, pivoting throughout as well. Tell us where we can find out a little bit more about the project and the festival and everything surrounding Middlewood Locks. Yeah, sure. You can follow us on Instagram. We're in Middlewood Locks, or our website, middlewoodlocks.co.uk. Sign up to our newsletter. You'll get to hear all about all our events, everything we've got going on, our yoga workshops, our festival. Sign up to the newsletter to find out about the future phases as well, or pop in and see us. We've got a lovely marketing suite, very friendly environment, very welcoming environment. We love people to come in and see us. So pop in and see us. Thanks both. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.